What's up guys, ZiSotto here, and we're doing the patch notes review for Trials of King Hercules, patch 4.10 or 1.0. This patch is pretty cool in many regards, I'm not gonna lie. I am positively surprised. And we will talk about the skins real quick, and then we go on the balance changes as usual and put the most of the time into that. So, skin number 1 is BACCHUS. He gets a full bunch of, well, remodels. He looks a lot skinnier. The model looks even skinnier than this. He looks a lot more attractive, a lot younger. A very different depiction of what we have at the moment, which, you know, BACCHUS had various depictions in the mythology, so I can see where this is coming from. A lot of people are going to miss the Fat Man, but the Fat Man will still be there on certain skins. His his enemy skin now looks like Keemstar or Dan Bilzerian for some reason, and Apollo is totally into that. This skin is it's an interesting image, unfortunately can't see, but this is his gold skin, and the diamond skin, legendary skin, obviously all gonna get the new versions. Then we have god skins, and we have sick god skins this patch. We're just gonna open them all real quick, and then we go through them one by one and show you the bigger picture. We have a skin for Poseidon, actually. The skin changes a lot because both his 1 and his ultimate allow tentacles. His 1 is actually a lot higher than the normal wave, which is interesting. And yeah, sick voice lines. I see a bit of Gul'dan, World of Warcraft kind of style, even with the runes here and everything. Just not as orcish, but pretty cool. And obviously some Lovecraft style. We have this Knight Hercules skin, which has absolutely amazing animations. I wish they would transfer some of them to the normal Herc. You guys know I'm not a fan of Herc, but this skin is just fucking dope. We have a skin for Ravana, which is also really amazing. It is a Sub-Zero kind of skin from the Mortal Kombat series. And he even has some of the lines, Toasty line, all that kind of stuff. We have Ram, which is, we had some discussion in chat, which superhero is referring to. I think in the end it's mostly Hawkeye and a little bit of Green Arrow there and something else. But yeah, superhero skin with like lightning, arrows. And we have a Seductress skin for Daji, 50s style, Marilyn Monroe kind of inspired. And this is actually, which is very interesting to me, a tier 2. That is, so I assume it will still use the standard lines because it's a tier 2, but it does not look like any of the old tier 2s. It's much different, very much reworked, and I think it's really cool for a tier 2. I think along with especially Nemesis and Jingwei, this is one of the best tier 2 skins we have right now. We don't know which ones will be in a chest, but both the Knight and this skin will be through the Adventure Pass for the new adventure. So you get the Herc skin right away and the Poseidon in this treasure chest kind of thing, whereas the others you will unlock in other ways. I would assume the Ravana is probably in a chest and the other ones are like direct unlocks. Poseidon gets a dance mode, and there is a new thing called Trials of Hercules, which is a new adventure, which I will just very briefly scrape over. So it's kind of a PvE mode with very nice visuals in the maps from what we've seen so far. And aside of this PvE part, you get certain rewards. You can get certain chests with like rare skins for getting gold on the adventures. So you have to do like certain quests. It's very Diablo-ish, World of Warcraft-ish kind of thing. And I think it's really cool. I think it seems a lot more fun than Smite card, at least at first glance. We'll see how good it is in the end, but I'm excited for it. The guards get some bug fixes, just tiny ones. Singer gets a range description fix. Bellona Bludgeon will just get an updated description that the basic attacks on Bludgeon only do 33% of the lifesteal. Daji gets a visual FX fix and the mana cost description updated. Kumbhakana fixed an issue where the knockup was actually dealing the damage basically when the enemy started dropping down again instead of on the ground, which is weird. The Nene Kappa gets a small fix, which apparently before it led to him having low health instead of what he was supposed to have, so that's get fixed. And Sky Cutting Axe gets a buff, or change, fix, sorry, where the ability was providing incorrect protections. And that gets us to the item changes. So what we see first, a lot of relics are getting buffed and some are getting nerfed, just to turn this whole thing around a little bit, because you know what meta we were in, we talked about that yesterday, and we're gonna see that this is, you know, being changed and fixed somewhat, at least, I guess. So certain changes on various items. First of is Brace of Undoing. Duration increased to 5 seconds, which is interesting because this is exactly the same duration as Sunder. Now, if you think about this, you will see the early game Sunder. The early game Sunder will probably still be stronger than Brace Off and Doing, even after all this. But if somebody Sunders you and you can survive the initial burst, you can do Brace Off and Doing, heal most of that up, and if you use your abilities before, you have your cooldowns back and you can use them again. Not quite again, but again sooner than the enemy can. And this may turn around a trade that was otherwise going in your favor. And what especially is interesting here is the upgrade of Brace Off and Doing. Cooldown is reduced to 100 seconds instead of 120, which is quite short for a relic. And along with that, it gets mana and health restoration of 60% instead of 50%. I can definitely see some gods picking this up more than beforehand, especially Hercules, obviously, but also with like Fafnir, some of the more healing gods, Hades, kind of that stuff. I think there's room for this now. The next one is Heavenly Wings. Heavenly Wings, obviously not that great in the moment, extra sprint, because it just does the slow cleanse once and then doesn't immune you to it. What we see here is cooldown decrease from 150 to 140. I don't think it's going to do too much. But the upgrade gets 150 to 110 second cooldown decrease. So it's a lot more logical to upgrade now against a heavy, slow comp. Though the problem, once again, is that slows can still be reapplied. For example, Nemesis has 2 slows. Many gods have like reapplying slows. And it doesn't really do too much there still. But definitely better than before. And maybe there in comps where it's needed, where it's necessary, it's strong. We'll see more of it now. Horrific Emblem also gets a cooldown decrease. Obviously, just wasn't quite worth it yet. And especially the upgrade with 90 seconds will pretty much be up for every team fight now. So I can see that being used a lot more. It's 30-second cooldown reduction on the second rank of it. So that's pretty heavy. Phantom Veil also, gets a cooldown decrease from 180 to 150 seconds. Now you know this item is mostly not bought because of the long cooldown. It gives you knock-up immunity, which is very strong, and it gets you through any kind of player-made wall, of which there are quite a lot. So, especially as an old encounter, who's already not that strong in the meta, it has more potential now. Thing is, we're not seeing too many wall gods at the moment. Kind of Thor is a bit out, Ymir's a bit out. Not that popular, at least. So, it is not at its peak, but the knock-up immunity is still very, very nice. And the upgraded version has 130 seconds cooldown. Still long, but a lot shorter. So, maybe we'll see more of this, though I don't think it's the most impactful change in this patch. Sundering Spear, that was coming. Nerfed, but not by much. The base damage of the ability is decreased by 10, so it's 30 base damage, and then the damage per level is decreased by 2. So if we're talking level 1, level 2, we're doing like, instead of 52 damage, you're doing, instead of 54 damage, you're doing 42, and on level 2, instead of, what are we at, 68 damage? Is that correct? You're doing 54. Not a major difference as to what it does. It's still more than a basic attack. It's still range. You can still clean up kills. But it's a little less impactful. And the thing is, it still has the damage increase. And it's still going to do the same thing late game. And that's the issue here. That tanks are going to be melted late game regardless when they get hit by Sunder in the face. And they die. But we have new relics that could potentially do something against it. And it could potentially be impactful. We'll see about that more precisely. Sundering Spear upgrade also gets a nerf. The cooldown is increased from 100 seconds to 120 seconds. The Sundering Spear upgrade remains strong in terms of damage. It keeps the old damage values, but that doesn't really matter too much on that point, to be honest. Like that extra damage is not that crazy. It's only for early, and you're not going to buy a Sundering Spear upgrade at the start of the game most of the time, unless there's some, ridiculous build just specifically for that. But the cooldown increase hits Sunder, because it won't necessarily be up for every team fight. Like I said, there are other relics that I know on 90 seconds cooldown that might be doing a little more in that regard. Still strong, not quite as strong as before. I would like to see a little more of it nerfed, but it's a start. Death Toll. Death Toll also gets a nerf, and that one was coming. If you have been paying attention to the solo lane lately, and you have been paying attention to it on the high levels of play, you will see that there was basically only below Osiris pretty much every game. Some Elong Shen, all that kind of stuff. Everyone who's an AoE cleave kind of stayed there, except for Nike maybe. And now we're seeing a nerf to the mana restored from basic attacks from 3... a buff to the mana restored from basic attacks from 3 to 4. So a little more mana sustained in that regard, which I don't see why that was needed. I think the nerf on its own was fine. I don't know why there was extra mana now, but Maybe so the AoE characters still get enough mana, but no, everyone gets more mana, so the hunters can pick up Death Toll more for mana, which they already did. Junglers can pick it up, I don't know. But the good part here, basic attacks that hit all enemies in melee range restore 4 health and 2 mana on every enemy after the first hit, so half. So you're not gonna get as much crazy sustain, and we're gonna see more gods being picked up in solo, and maybe some less of Death Toll in general. So it's still very much a nerf overall for the item, and the mana is just kind of a weird thing to me. The reason here is we are increasing the mana restore to help more characters use this relic. I don't know where they say relic, but it's item. While making cleave basic attacks only receive 50% of the benefit they currently do. I don't feel... It says, the description says, my actually being a bit underwhelming on most. I don't see this item being underwhelming on most, to be honest. I think it's still a very, very strong starter, but, you know, reasons. Runeforged Hammer gets a nerf. 2,300 gold instead of 2,000 gold. It was way too cheap in comparison to what it did. Now it's much more in line with other items around the tree, and it's totally justifiable. No surprise there at all. God, it changes. Daji. Daji is way out there now. If Daji was too weak before, she's a very interesting one now. Horrible burns. Slow. 10% up to 30%. So maxing this relatively early is beneficial if you want more slows. Because then you can apply more basic attacks with your very awkward basic attack chain. And that's going to be very impactful. Problem is, we'll see about that. But we'll talk about that in a second. 1,000 cuts. More damage. We're getting more damage per rank. It still starts at 15 at the first rank. But it scales up with an extra 5 damage per rank now. Which makes it... with an extra 5 damage on the first rank. Seeing that's right, and then an extra 10 on the second, an extra 15, so it's like 5 extra per rank on top of what it already has, so it scales up pretty nicely. No, it's still 5 extra per rank, sorry. I got it, it's still 5 extra per rank, but it adds up. Never mind. So, total damage is 460 instead of 380. Increase physical power scaling from 20% to 30%, that's important. Scaling, per hit, 10% more. And knock-up immune while channeling. Very important. Why is this? Somehow I thought this was on Trickster's Spirit, actually, the knock-up immune. It sounded like that during the patch notes. But on 1,000 cuts, it's even more important. Because what the main issue with 1,000 cuts was, like I said, it was so easy to interrupt. Everything would interrupt it. Everything would interrupt your main source of damage. And, you know, you were just better off using it as an escape tool. Now... depends on the enemy comp. If they have 5 stuns, maybe you should still not up it. But it's a lot more impactful in that regard. And you can still max the 1 first if you want to. I would take it more a situational decision. If the enemy has a lot of knockups, you can probably go for the 2 first. Because they're not going to get you out of it. If they have like something like a Vulcan Tour or something like that. Though I think the Tour might work differently actually. Never mind. But you get the idea. Vulcan Village. You will... be able to use this ability more effectively in that regard. Kind of like Thor's 3, which, you know, depending on the comp, you will max Thor's 3 first, or you will max the hammer first. As in certain comps, he will get the 3 off most of the time. In other comps, he will not get it off so often. And with 1,000 cuts doing a lot of damage early in comparison to late game, it also makes sense to max it early. But, like I said, Horrible Burns is still very much an option. Trickster Spirit, reduce post-fire time from 0.2 to 0. Lot faster, and this should help you really connect to an enemy and getting a basic off, hopefully. And that, like I said, was one of the big issues of Daji, so good change there. And then we have Pao Lao. Pao Lao gets a ridiculous amount of changes. Unfortunately, not the one I was hoping for. I was hoping for just quicker chains. You can now right-click cancel it. So you can jump early. The duration of shooting is increased from 3 seconds to 5 seconds. And the deployable duration is increased from 7 seconds to 9 seconds. And the chains are easier to see. I actually pointed some of this out to one of the highest players, especially the chains that I thought, you know, they're very strong when they hit, and it would be nice to see them. Problem is, it's still very easy to break, although still probably, while strong on paper, very problematic to get off. But it's a much better escape tool now, because the enemy doesn't know exactly when you jump down anymore. And especially with a blink combo, that's going to be effective, at least. So, overall, good for her. Overall, Daji has a lot more potential, is a lot stronger. She was probably very much underperforming, and I can see why these changes were made, and you will see a lot more of her in your games now. Fafnir gets some nerfs, curse strength, just the base damage on the early ranks decreased, whereas Korea's the heal on the later ranks decreased. Both slight changes to a character that is very strong and competitive. Fair to me. Mana cost increase on curse as well a little bit. Ganesh, Damic Billows down leads 40% damage to minions and jungle monsters. I guess, you know, just a tiny bit of benefit for situations where you have those around. Excuse me, I misinterpreted that. Nope. I actually thought it was a buff because I was actually not aware that that was a possibility before. I thought it didn't deal damage to them at all. It's a reduction. It's a nerf. My bad. It's a nerf because it did previously already hit minions and jungle monsters, but it was possible to kill them through the ultimate very quickly if you put them on the line of the ultimate. That's what it is. So that's why it's decreased damage. Sorry. It was actually a nerf. And that's an understandable one. I can see that. I never abused that. I never knew that. But it's interesting. Khepri gets a nerf. And this is the weirdest one in the patch. Ice Rising Dawn getting a damage nerf. It's a base damage nerf, a small one. But I don't see Khepri being in need of a nerf. Because this is a highlight this role as a late game support. But Khepri's, you know, I don't know, Khepri's Khepri. So my thought on this is, and you can make this a meme if you want to, Cernunnos is overperforming, better nerf Khepri. And then the last one is Neith. Neith has fallen out of favor last season. Not surprised there, Neith was not really showing up as the other hunters were. Backflip increased the damage by 20 on the highest rank and 20 across all ranks. A little bit of ability damage, fair enough. And World Weaver increases stun duration from 1.1 to up to 1.5 to 1.5 at all ranks. Gives you a little more control, a little more CC, earlier levels for your team, especially if you want to set up something, which is very nice, which is actually quite decent in many situations. Don't know if it's enough to warrant more play for her, but definitely impactful change. Overall, I'm very happy with this patch notes. A lot of things that were an issue were tackled. There are some that I feel like need further nerfs later down the road, but we'll see about that. We can wait for that. And with that, thank you guys for watching. I hope this was informative, insightful, fun to watch. See you for the next one tomorrow. If you are not subscribed yet, feel free to click the sub button. Maybe the bell next to it. It really helps me out. Duke Sloth, out.